everybody, and welcome to another hair-raising, fun-filled, expeditious episode of Radiorama. As the name implies, I show you how to work on radios. And today we have a Gillfillan Brothers radio. Gillfillan Brothers was out of Los Angeles. They were one of the larger California brands starting in the 30s. Said it's a Model 32. And it has, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 tubes with a power transformer, decent beefy speaker, 3-gang tuning condenser. So it should be fairly simple. I like these power transformer sets a little bit better. See if it actually works with my hand on the knob to turn it off if we need to. And
no booze out there, but like a nice rest.
It's not humming or anything, but I don't trust it. Anything could happen with one of these guys, so I'm going to pair it off and take the chassis out and see what's going on with the innards. Alright, well, someone's definitely been in here, but it was a long time ago, because that is not factory original. You would not see masking tape used as insulating, but we have 2 electrolytic capacitors. Are both rated at 8 microfarads, and then this pinkish one, that's definitely a replacement, as are these Mallory's. So it's been worked on a few times. Not unusual. If someone kept a set in service for decades, this is also a replacement. These are probably original. So what we need to do is replace these electrolytics, and you'd be amazed at how much smaller the modern replacements are going to be. It's a feather. Anyway, let me get these bad boys out of here, replace them with. The fact that these still work is pretty amazing. Some of these I think were a wet electrolytic, and as long as they weren't punctured, sometimes they can last a very long time. Okay, so I got the 2 electrolytics replaced. There's one here, which you can barely see, and then this one. Key thing to note on some of these guys, I know it's very tempting to automatically assume that a set that is a powered transformer set is all chassis ground, but the way that the second electrolytic is grounded is through actually the power transformer. Probably goes through the center tap. Make sure and observe that, because if you automatically just go to chassis ground, it's probably going to hum like crazy, and you'll be very sorry. So I want to power this up again and make sure it still works before resuming the recapping process, which is replacing all these paper caps, which I assure you are probably all completely bad, even though the set works. You shouldn't trust them. If any of them were to, fuse together, you could short something out and cause some damage. So, cheap insurance. Still working. I have no antenna on it, and it still picks up a little bit, so it must be pretty sensitive. So, it's time to start the very boring process of replacing the capacitors. And what I do, you need to observe the value, which is usually printed on their bodies. It says the microfarad and then voltage rating. I buy everything in 630 volt rated caps, these yellow guys. I had a question recently. It was like, does it matter if they're yellow or orange or anything? Like, no, it doesn't matter what the capacitor looks like. They're all pretty good these days. As long as they have the same ratings or equal, like basically 20%, you're fine. The only difference is when you have electrolytics. As long as the capacitance is at or greater, the capacitance, and of course the voltage needs to be at or greater, then you're fine. Alrighty, it is time to test it with all of the nice new shiny capacitors installed. Probably be a lot healthier now that it doesn't have a bunch of crappy old leaky capacitors in there. And we got power. And again, it just takes a little bit of time to warm up. Need to clean these pots too, they're a little scratchy. Yep, there we go. I think what I'm going to do is attach a real antenna, see what it really performs like.
Let's go. It is very slow, which also backs up.
What about the other? There's a lot of crap in the tuning condenser.
organization.
Wade through water, mud, and insurance paperwork.
Yeah, I can do this.
You go, Karen! By simply understanding and updating what her insurance covers and doesn't cover now, she'll be better prepared no matter when disaster strikes. Learn other simple ways to protect your home and family before a natural disaster at ready.gov. That's ready.gov. A message from FEMA and the Ad Council.
Indeed!
Sure you play Freddy first.
Of life, they're just swept along by the currents and wondering if...
It does work, but I need to clean the pots, clean the tuning condenser, oil the tuning condenser, clean the tube sockets, clean the chassis. It's really dusty, so I'm going to take it outside and do that. Oh yeah, it probably would help if I put the grid cap back on this puppy. There we go. Pretty well made set. It's pretty chunky. I like it. Okay, so I'm going to take this outside because I don't want to make myself sneeze. But what I'm going to do is just kind of brush the loose stuff off if I can get to it. Probably could take a few of these tubes out. But just kind of like loosen some of this stuff up a little bit. Then get out my handy dandy leaf blower. Huge difference. Now, of course, it's not all perfectly clean, but you get the idea of what I'm doing here. I'll probably take the tubes out so I can get to the dust. The thing is, this has an open back, so people are definitely going to see into it. So if you see a clean chassis, it's much nicer. It's just little details like that. I also need to replace this cord. Unfortunately, it's a little ratty. I like to try to save the cords, but you know, it's a safety issue if they're not in good shape. Alright, so now what we want to do is oil the bearings in the tuning condenser. There's one in the front and there's one in the back, and then this guy, there's a little friction wheel here. I don't want to get any on the friction wheel part, so we'll go underneath and oil it here. And let's have that drift in. Alright, that's already moving a lot nicer. Likewise, what I want to do is oil the shaft of the volume control, so that's going to move a lot nicer. That'll usually just soak down in there via capillary action, and it'll feel a lot better the more you use it. Alright, let's set this guy up. Oh yeah, all the difference in the world. I can just barely touch that and it moves. So that'll be a lot easier, a lot smoother to tune. I'm going to get some of the dust out of here that's collected in the bottom of the speaker. Just be real gentle when you do that. You do not want to poke a hole in the speaker. Trust me, I've done it way too many times. Chassis is looking pretty good. The cabinet needs some love, so let's turn our attention to it. Alright, next thing we're going to do is work on the cabinet, which is a little tired looking. I use this stuff called Old English, and it's interesting because here in the good old US of A, it's about, I don't know, $4 or $5 a bottle. I just had one commentator from England who said, yes, you can buy it in England, but it's like 20 pounds. And I don't know what my conversion rates are, but 20 anything sounds crazy. So I'm not sure if maybe the stuff is imported there from the US or something, and you have to pay the import duties or whatever, but that's a lot of money. But you can see what I'm doing here. This is kind of helping clean up some of the rough spots and the uneven finish. Don't be afraid to use a lot of it. Oh shit, the bottle fell over. Now that I know how much it costs in other countries, I'm going to treat it more preciously. But what this does is it goes into these old dried up finishes and Kind of revitalizes it. Now, it's not going to be perfect. This is, after all, a 90-something-year-old radio. And if it has the original 90-year-old finish, it's not going to look like a new finish. Not by any means. I know some people, first thing to do if they have a radio that's remotely beat up, they will strip it down and refinish it, which is fine. You know, there's some people that are in this hobby because they like to work on cabinetry, and I appreciate that. Like, I can't do it worth a damn. I'm terrible at working on cabinets, which is probably why I could prefer to do this, because I can get it to look halfway decent. So I'm going to go over the whole thing with it several times. It's going to need a few applications, and then we'll see what that looks like. All right, next step. I've decided to run an audio input through it, and it's doing what I thought it would do. You get into 1930 sets, and there's just not enough oomph from the incoming audio, so we need to boost it, because this right here is cranked all the way. It's only like a quarter of the volume, so I'm going to add this isolation transformer in it. The turn ratio has everything to do with it, so this is a 120 volt in and 6 volt out. And we run the audio through backwards. We go through the secondary, and the primary goes to both sides of the volume control, which is, in this one, ground, and then the top. The top goes to this connection here, which goes into one of the IF cans. So I'll need to add this in front of it and see if that improves things. Well, that didn't help. In fact, it now sounds worse. That's aggravating. Usually that works, but it ain't working at all. So I might have to try something else here.
Here's some news that'll get you
Well, it's just gonna have to be a little bit of a gentle radio.
for you. I just bet it's a cinch you.
It's the best it's gonna be. It's not bad. I mean, it's not like it's not listenable. It'd be a good like background music thingy. So this time it's directly wired in. That concludes the electronics part of it. I need to work a little bit more on the cabinet and get that back together. All right, next thing I'm going to do is wax up the cabinet with my favorite thing in the whole wide world. Is this thing. It's a drill attachment, and I use this bubblegum pink looking Carnauba wax, and just want to go over the whole thing with wax, and that'll clean up the finish and also bring back some of the original gloss. All right, I realize I forgot to film the last little bit of this episode, but it does work. It's a little crazy around here. We are preparing for an auction. So that's the reason my channel's been a little bit crazy this last couple of months, because I've just been hauling ass on radios for 2 or 3 months now. And so a lot of these we'll see in future episodes. But anyway, I know this is kind of a sloppy episode, and I realize it. Thanks so much for hanging in there with me. Until the next time a radio comes across my workbench, I'll see you guys next time. Adios.